Hello everyone, welcome to this series on modern data stack fundamentals. We'll continue discussing some of the modern data stack tools and technologies and how these can be used to build some of the cloud data architectures. Today's topic is a bit different. I'm not going to talk about any specific tool or a technology or any of the specific platforms as such. What we are going to discuss is how do we select services within a cloud provider for a particular use case. Like there, you would find that there are multiple services which can support specific use cases. So within that, how do we select it? And we'll also talk about briefly about some of the external services. And what we are going to do is not a comparison of any of these services, but it is more or less a guidance or a simple tips and tricks that you can utilize while selecting or recommending any of these services. Uh, so I've categorized the cloud data services into three different categories. Okay, one is cloud native, the second is the managed offering, and third is external. So what are these, right? Let's try to explain these first, and then we can get into some examples and what are the advantages or limitations of these, and that time we'll take some examples of some of the services. So when I say cloud native, these are the services which are provided by a particular cloud provider. And to make this presentation more effective and simple, let's only pick up AWS for today's session and talk about some of the services within AWS. Okay, so what are the cloud native AWS data services, or the critical services or the principal services of AWS, right? Like we have something like the AWS Glue. Okay, that service is only available within AWS. That is cloud native. Okay. uh, Now there are also some of the services which are like the managed offering of an open source technology, right? So managed offering are those services which are built around open source technologies and also available within the cloud provider. Okay, to give an example like EMR. And third is the external ones are which are not cloud native, which are not available within that cloud provider, right? It is available by any third party, okay, or external services. And when we see the examples, right, I think you will be able to understand what I am trying to say here, and then we'll get on to more details. So when I say cloud native, right, there are services like AWS Glue or Kinesis or the step function, right? These are only and only available within AWS. If you have built something using these services, you can utilize that. You can execute them only using AWS, right? You cannot have these executed outside AWS, right? This is very, very native to that particular cloud provider. Okay, when we say managed, there are managed services like EMR, which is nothing but a managed Hadoop offering. Okay, similarly, we have MSK, right, which is nothing but a managed offering for Kafka, right? Managed streaming for Kafka, it is a managed offering for Kafka. On similar lines, we have MWAA, which is a managed Airflow offering. So these are the services which are provided by uh, the cloud providers, and what they do is they'll provide you the actual open source platform itself, but all the management is done by the cloud provider, like all the admin activities, so that you can concentrate fully on your um, application development. You don't have to worry about the admin part of that. Okay, these are the managed services. And then the external services like Databricks. If we talk about Spark, right, Spark, we can use it using AWS Glue, which is a native one. We can use it within EMR, where we get the managed Hadoop offering. It comes with Spark as well. We can have Spark enabled it. While we do that, we can also have the third party tools like Databricks. Okay, these are the external tools. Let's call it as the external service. On similar lines, we also have something called as Confluent Kafka. So if you don't want to use the open source Kafka, Apache Kafka, or even the managed offering, you can go for Confluent Kafka, which is an external offering. So these are the three categories, right? Now, how do you select between these? Okay, let's say you want to use Spark for some of the use case. Now you can also use Glue, you can use EMR, or you can use Databricks. Similarly, if you're trying to do some, real-time streaming use case, you can use Kinesis data streams, or you can use MSK, or you can go for something like Kafka also. So as an architect, okay, or as a solution architect, data architect, how do you decide on these? So again, these are based on use cases. Okay, that's the most important one. There is no thumb rule for this, that this service can be used for this scenario or this can be used for that scenario. It is all use case based, and that is why you'll see so many services within AWS, right? If you also look at databases, there are multiple database services within AWS, and these are use case specific. They are meant for a particular use case. But what I'll try to do is I'll try to give some guidelines based on whatever I have seen so far, or based on my experience, so that it can help you also to decide on how do you not finalize, but at least you can understand what each service can bring in, what are the high level limitations and high level advantages or benefits of using these. Okay, so the very first one I would say is, as we spoke earlier, for any cloud native, right, it is specific to that cloud provider. Okay, so limitation is you cannot execute anything within this in any other cloud. Okay, but if you have used a managed offering, okay, which is based on open source, then you can have that similar code run somewhere else. Like if you have run something which is in Spark and it is running on EMR, you can also run it on your on-prem, on your Spark cluster. It is possible. But in Glue, right, if you have used some of the features of Glue, right, Glue Spark, if you have used features like the dynamic data frames, which are very specific to Glue, you cannot use it. You will have to get to that conversion done. Okay, that's the difference. And the third, when we talk about something like Databricks, yes, it can work with multi-cloud, right? Offerings like Databricks or Snowflake, they support multiple cloud. Okay, so if you are today you are working on AWS and tomorrow you want to run that same code on Azure or GCP, it is possible, and that is why Databricks and Snowflake are gaining so much popularity, that you don't have to worry about your code conversion and all when you are migrating from one cloud to other. They support multiple clouds. This is the one primary difference. But at the same time, right, when we talk about limitations of Glue, at the same time it can integrate really well with other AWS services, right? All these native services, be it Glue, Kinesis, right, it can integrate really well with other of the AWS services. Okay, case in point is like you have AWS lake formation, right, which can bring you the access control, or Athena, right? So all these services can integrate and talk with each other really well. S3 for that matter, right? It is very straightforward to use Glue to write into S3. That's the main advantage of cloud native services. But whereas managed or external, right, there will be, yes, connectors would be available. You will have to depend on that, but there would be some work involved in that. So that integration is not that straightforward, right? You will have to do something. Like let's say you have Snowflake as the external tool, and you are trying to write into S3. Okay, you want to load something from S3, or you want to unload something from Snowflake to S3. You'll have to create a storage integration and follow all the steps. So there is certain effort involved. It is a bit complex to have that integration done. Whereas the native services enjoys very flexible, easy to use integration. Okay, so when can we use this, right? One of the ways to look at it is, if you're building something completely new in cloud, that time you can definitely think about the native services, right? Suppose you're trying to have a real-time use case, you can always think about Kinesis, okay, because it's a new development. But if you have something which is an existing use case, you already have some code in Kafka running on your on-prem, that time you can think of using something like MSK or a managed offering, so that you can reuse the code, right? Because it is nothing but just a managed offering that it will completely support your open source platform, whichever you were using earlier. It is just the management part, okay, or the admin part is taken care by AWS. So if you have already code written in Kafka and you want to reuse it, you want to leverage as much as possible, you can go for something like MSK. Now again, it's not always the case that you have to use this. Even if it is an existing code, you can think of moving to Kinesis. but if you reuse that, it can help you in saving your efforts, right? And same with happens with the external tools also, because they are generally built on the same, open source kind of a platform. You can reuse the existing code. um, Experts might not be available for cloud native. It may happen that Glue is a new service. You don't have people who have already used it, so there would be some learning curve for that. But if you're using managed one, you already have people who know Kafka really well, or you have been working on Hadoop, right? They can simply use the same expertise and just build on the top. In fact, it is like it is just the admin part that will go away. You don't have to worry about that. Whatever expertise was required while writing the code in on-prem environment using these open source tech, you can still use the same. Whereas for external ones, it's the very similar case like managed. In fact, most of these external tools, right? These are developed by the co-creators of the open source offering itself, right? Like Databricks are created by the co-creators of Spark, Confluent by co-creators of Kafka, right? And it is with the most of these, SaaS tools, or even if they are not the co-creators, they have been, working on that technology for a long time. So they have built in all the good features which were available with the open source tech stack, and you can easily reuse that. So the learning curve is not that difficult, I would say, as compared to some of the native tools. Even the native tools are pretty simple, but it is not that straightforward. So some of them, like if you have been using orchestrator as an Uzi, and if you try to get onto step functions, it is a bit different. Okay, but if you get onto Airflow, if you are using Airflow in your existing environment, then you can easily get onto the managed offering of Airflow, right? The managed workflow of for Apache Airflow, that's the offering by AWS for the orchestration service. New native features are easily available for cloud native services. They keep on adding a lot of new features, and since the integration is easier, all these native features can really help. Again, to give an example, the new not new, I would say, the federation kind of a services which are offered within AWS, right? If you want to federate from a Redshift or Athena, if you want to connect to RDS, that can be easily done. So all these new features of federation, sharing, access control, security, that becomes very easy with cloud native. At the same time, what the managed offering would enjoy is the community support, right? Because it is still an open source. A lot of things which are applicable for the open source are still available here, so they would enjoy the community support. Cost and performance benefits would be also play a major factor while residing on these services. Again, with native, if you really want to have the make leverage the cost related things from cloud native are the services which can provide you this, right? It can give you a lot of cost savings because they have those kind of inbuilt features available that can help you not just for cost but for the performance also. Similarly for security and access control, as we just spoke about it earlier. So all these features are readily available out of the box. You don't really have to cater for anything else. You can easily get it within the cloud native services. But what are the advantage of managed? If you compare to this, you get a lot of control, right? You get a lot of configuration control. You get more freedom. Like some of the big data developers, data engineers, they like to have a lot of control over the Hadoop clusters, right? And you'll get that if you're using a managed service as compared to cloud native, where you cannot do lot of changes. Like let's say you're trying to use Glue for streaming, right? Which is still a new thing. You may not get all the control that you need for adjusting a lot of things. But if you're using something like the managed services, you will still have the all the very similar things, right? Whatever configurations were used for Kafka, the same things you have to bring in here. Okay. And how the external ones, they'll bring you the best in class performance, right? Databricks Spark cluster, right? If you try to use that, you will get great performance around Spark, because again, they are the ones who have co-created Spark. They know everything in and out of Spark, and it's same with the other external services which are built ground up into cloud for these kind of open source tech. And that brings us to the last point, right? So the most important point, if you're using cloud native, it is more of more or less for a single cloud, right? If you have used Kinesis or Step Function or Glue or Athena, right? Not Athena, I would say it is still based on Presto, but these services, right, like Glue, Kinesis, Step, these are very very native to AWS. Okay, you cannot really export things out of that. I mean, not data. I mean, I'm mainly talking about the code. You cannot just take it out and run it on something else easily. But if you're using managed services, right, it can be migrated to other clouds easily, right? If let's take an example of Airflow, right? If you have something, if you have DAX on Apache, the managed workflow for Apache Airflow on AWS, and tomorrow you decide you don't want to run it here, you want to run Airflow somewhere else, you can still do that. Okay, your all the code will remain mostly same. You can just migrate it outside. And with the third party ones, with the external ones, it already supports multiple cloud platforms, and that is why they are so popular, right? So if you're running Databricks today on AWS, tomorrow you want to run it on Azure or GCP, you can easily do that without much hassles. It does support that very very easily. So yeah, I mean, this is a very high level summary. Again, these are not the exact guidelines that you should use, or the exact reasons based on which you can make the decisions. But these are just some tips and tricks, or I would say a few points or key considerations that as an architect that you should look at. Obviously there would be multiple other reasons. Most important would be the use case, right? You have to understand the use case properly before you propose any of these. If the use case is specific to Kafka, going for Kinesis may not make sense. If the use case is more around Hadoop features which are non-Spark features, then you will have to go for EMR. Glue won't help because it will only provide you Spark, right? And if it is for orchestration, right, and you want to orchestrate across multiple clouds, or you have a hybrid environment, then you may have to go for Airflow, or some of the other third party services like Astronomer and all for Airflow. Step function may not help. So yeah, the most important is the use case. These are all use case driven. First you should look at the use case. Based on that, you have to come up with the options, and then based on some of these guidelines, you can see like how do you want to proceed ahead, what's your overall strategy, whether you want to go for more or less a native features, so which can bring you easy integration, or you're looking for something which can help you later to migrate to other clouds, or something like a third party or completely external ones, which is very very easy to manage in the multi cloud kind of an environment. So yeah, that's it for the day. If you have liked the content, please like the video, and do follow me on Twitter and Medium. That's my handle. Thanks for listening, and hopefully see you next week. Thank you. Bye bye.